Hello, everyone. This is Mohammed. I'm a Kurdish. I'm from Iraqi Kurdistan. I am working with the CPT Christian Peacemaker Teams since 2007. Since then, I am a member of these organizations, and I'm still working with them, and also I'm an English teacher. It will be my honor to serve you today in this great event. I already introduced myself. Julie, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Yeah, I hope my internet's working better. I don't know for any of you that missed us. Iraqi Kurdistan. So we've got a backup internet running. We might have to switch over to that, but hopefully it'll work for the duration of this training. My name is Julie Brown. I'm the outreach coordinator for Christian Peacemaker Teams, and I trained with CPT in 2015. Right after that, I went on to the Iraqi Kurdistan field team, and I've been the outreach coordinator now for a little over a year. While I'm in the U.S., I'm part of a Catholic worker community that's located in Des Moines, Iowa. And personally, I have a background in activism and organizing and some civil disobedience. So that's kind of my background. For any of you on here that don't know, a brief summary of some things that we do. So first, CPT builds partnerships to transform violence and oppression in situations of conflict. And at the invitation of peacemaking communities, we provide things like physical unarmed accompaniment, advocacy, human rights, observation, and networking. And so we have teams in several different places. One of the places that we have a team is in Palestine, and they work alongside families that are resisting occupation there. And also they have a project where they walk school children to school in the town of Hebron. We also have a team in Colombia, and they work with activists and also farming communities that are resisting things like war, violence, and hyperdevelopment of their lands. We have a team in Lesbos, and they're supporting the migrant community that's coming over across the Aegean Sea into Europe. And then we also have a network of folks called the Turtle Island Solidarity Network, and they do some education and also working to undo settler colonialism in what is also called North America. And then finally, we have a team here in Iraqi Kurdistan, and our team here works with activists that are fighting for freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And then we also have a big portion of our project that focuses on partnering with communities that are impacted by cross-border bombings. And if you'd like to hear a little bit more team, that's where Mohammed and I currently are at. I'm gonna ask Herb to drop a link. Oh, there's for cpt.org. He's already on the ball with that one. But can you drop one for the Iraqi Kurdistan team's Facebook? I don't know. I think maybe, yeah, it's also on there. But so we understand that violence is rooted in systemic structures of oppression. And so we're always working to find ways to undo these structures. And one of the things we do in CPT is that we have undoing oppression training with all of the CPT core members. And this is a journey we're all on. So if you hear something today that you think, oh, maybe this sounds a little oppressive, just feel free to name that in chat. Mohammed and I are both still learning. Or you can hop into the expo booth afterwards and we can just talk about it there. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that our trainings are generally 3 hours long or longer. And we were asked to go over a lot of different things today. One of the big topics of how to prepare a protest or a demonstration or a direct action. And that's a huge topic. So we're gonna blast through a whole lot of information fairly quickly. Don't worry, we'll be in the expo booth afterwards. We can talk if you missed anything, and I'm also going to share my slides so you guys can look at those later. Now I'm going to pass it over to Mohammed, and we're just going to get started. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Julie. So actually, to begin our workshop, I need help from Herb to organize a group of 5 volunteers. So if folks wants to participate in our activities. So I would like to invite 5 volunteers to join us and us to select those volunteers.
Yes, so being a volunteer, just request to come on and I will approve you as you do so.
Because it's a part of our trainings, like we need to have interactions with people. It's not like just a lecture, like we want to have some interactions with each other. Thank you so much for joining us. We need one more.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome. So for the group, actually, I hear my voice. Okay. I would like to ask a question. Why would you plan a direct action? So here is the question for you, group. Why would you like to? Why would you plan a direct action? So give us a reason or two. So you can just raise your hand or just say, or maybe I can call you for, maybe I can call Mary. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing the names because English is not my native language. So maybe I will start with Mary.
Okay, I think you're meaning myself. Well, I would start a direct action because there was a cause that, so for instance, in my life right now, that we're looking at how to stop Canada from sending arms to Saudi Arabia, arms which then get into the war in Yemen. And we know that a number of companies are supplying these arms or are transporting them. So trying to target those companies to make it more obvious, make it more known to the public that they're involved in this.
I wrote in the chat. Can you hear me?
I was muted. Thank you so much, Mary, for your input. Jen, you were about to say, you can.
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt you. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
And I put in the chat a little link of a little 8-minute YouTube video called The Encirclement of Rocky Flats. And I live 45 miles downwind from the birthplace of the atomic bomb at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. And so the 76th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki will be happening on either August 6th or the 9th of this August. And I would love to try to do an encirclement or a pilgrimage up and around the lab or along it and to get international news, because unfortunately, you may have heard that on Friday, President Biden has approved billions of dollars as a so-called deterrent of China to modernize nuclear weapons. And that's where they're doing it right now at Los Alamos National Laboratory.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Jean, for your input. That's a brilliant example. Maybe I will go to call Robert. Could you tell us?
I'm just sitting here thinking we are the California chapter of World Beyond War, and we are starting a fundraising campaign, and we're going to put up 3 billboards, and the billboard says 3% of the U.S. military spending could end starvation on Earth. One statement, big statement. in very populated parts of San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So that's a direct action, I think.
Yes.
Basically,
Yes,
what
you
we're
are
trying to
absolutely.
do is convince people of the astonishing waste of money the military spending is. And so I'm trying to think what we're doing is convincing and influencing.
That's a great example. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I'm gonna call Mariam. Are you still with us?
Hi, yes. Sorry.
Great.
I think there was an issue with my mic. I'm not sure if, is there a lot of background noise or can you hear me okay?
It's perfect.
Great, thank you. So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So the question, why would you plan a direct action? Give us reasons. Like, for example, here in Iraqi Kurdistan, there were teachers are not getting salaries, and they went on a street, they protest, they boycott to put pressure on the government to give their salaries.
I would organize a direct action to effectively speak truth to power and to follow through with that so that correct policies are in place, and the ones that are sometimes aren't implemented, and so people are deprived of their rights. So I would make sure that this way they're heard and the rights are duly given.
Great. So of course, so when he wants to do something and to put pressure to make those who have power to do something or to change something. Thank you so much. I think I want to call Paulina. Pauline. I'm so sorry about the pronunciation.
That's fine. It's Pauline. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now because I'm so overwhelmed with the discovery that we've had in Canada about the graves of 215 children who have been discovered beside an old residential home. And so I guess it's how best to honor those children and work towards the implementing the actions of TRC, which is our Truth and Reconciliation Commission that is put forth between the Aboriginal and the Canadians. Right. So it'd be something along those lines.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. So actually, just we believe that so direct action is when you want to raise awareness, right? So and also when you feel that your voice is not being heard, or the other ways failed, or the other ways didn't work. We need to have a direct action. And also, it will be very great also here to think like when we want to organize a direct actions, so there must be several steps that we need to take. And so Julie and we come up with 9 different steps that hopefully we can cover it here. And I will gonna start with the first one, which is the first step is to write down who has power. And sometimes it's called power mapping. So we need to write down who has power, who are those decision makers, and also who are those people who can influence those who has power or those who can make decisions. So this will be, for example, if I give you an example. So for example, if a mayor or a leader in your town made racist statements, right? So here we need to find out who are those people that can influence the mayor or the leader about to change his or her actions. So this will be another question for you, the group. So what you gonna do? Like, who do you think who may have power, okay, to influence the mayor's action or behavior? So maybe this time I'm gonna start to ask Mariam.
So I would believe that there is a hierarchy, and so you're always going to look at the person above the mayor in that hierarchy of political positions. So I'm not sure who that would be, but you're gonna so instead of directly going all the way to the top, because the person at the top is probably going to listen to a bunch of people below them anyway. You would probably go to the person immediately above the mayor. Or
Exactly. Thank you so much. That's a very good one. Mary?
Well, I guess what I've been used to and that I would trust would be the mayor is voted in, and so the people can influence his power to support him or not. And so the direct action could involve then getting as many groups on board, many different kinds of groups who are really concerned about whatever the issue is, and bring them all together to somehow make a statement to the mayor. So the grassroots and a variety of groups getting more and more people involved.
Yeah, that's Jen?
Religious groups, because they have a lot of power, and social media.
That's exactly true. Thank you so much. Paulina.
Well, most of us probably belong to little groups. Talk it up with those groups, or send emails around. Did you notice? Did you hear? Can you believe? What the mayor said. What is this stirring up within you? Well, what do you think we can do about this?
Exactly. Thank you. How about you, Robert?
I'm stuck on voters. I can't get beyond that. But from listening to this conversation, I'm realizing that there are a number of ways to get to the voters, including all the little groups that are being mentioned, because religious people are voters, or people in my neighborhood that are in a group are voters, and the PTA and so on.
Exactly. Thank you so much for all of you and for your input. I think I call everyone. I haven't missed anyone. Okay. So thank you so much for your help, and Herb will help you to take you back to the audience, because I need to share my slide here.
Do you want to share your slides, Mohammed? Is it working for you?
Trying.
Also do it. Oh, I think you're good.
Oh, I think
you're almost good. You just got to get onto the slides.
Yeah.
You might need to share window instead of full screen. That might be an option for you, so that you can just share the window that those slides are in.
maybe if Julie, could you help me with sharing your slide? It would be great.
Let's see if I can do this here.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Oh, I see. Hang on. Let's see if this works.
If you could go to the,
Here we go.
Perfect. Just step one.
Oh.
So as we mentioned, like the step one will be writing down the names of those who has power or those who are can influence those decision makers or those who has power. So also it will be like some of our in the volunteer group, some of them mentioned like it could be government groups, which is that exactly like such as party or community committees or co-workers. And also another group could be money groups. So for example, again, like government or investments or sponsors. Another group could be social groups, such as you also mentioned, like it could be religious groups or clans or tribes, you know, friends, family members. So these are very great examples you already mentioned. And now we go to the step 2, which is choose a target. So in step 2, when we mean to choose a target, so for your direct action, you need to have a action, to have a target, and that target should be based on the list that you already write it down. So, and it does not have to be one person; it could be variety of person, and it may be someone who can those who have power, and either socially, financially, or in a political ways. So another step is step 3. So make a goal that you can accomplish. So this will change depending on your action target and what you influence or power they have. So for example, let's say if your boss is stealing your salaries, right? So the boss can like their boss can fire them. So the goal is like your boss wants to steal your and the boss can stop doing that. So you are trying to change the behavior of the boss. And or maybe you know their boss can fire them. So you are trying to educate the boss of your boss, you know, like to tell them to be aware about this serious issue. And maybe you can talk to their tribe leaders, and the tribe leaders can have meeting with this person and to tell them that this is what you are doing, it's wrong. And also like the neighbors, you know, like you can go and talk to the neighbors and to tell them what is this person did. So the action is like to educate them about their behavior. So is choose your tactics. So we need to find like what will be our tactics here, right? So for example, like back then, years ago, one of the delegation of CPT here, they organized a protest in front of the Turkish Turkish embassy here in the capital of my regions. So the overall target was, right? So the action target was the ambassador and the staff or the consulate staff, and the goal was to put pressure on the ambassador to talk to people in Ankara to stop bombing civilians alongside the border between Iraq and Turkey. And the tactic was hold a shocking protest in an area you are not allowed to be in, you know, and use media and surprise to amplify your the messages. So, and actually, I would like to ask the folks here, and you can put your answer in the chat box. What is another type of action you have heard of? It would be great if you just write your answer in the chat box. What are the other types of direct action that you heard? So far, I don't see any. Okay, yeah, so blocking streets, yes, banner drop, NVDA, yeah, civil disobedience, Great. These are great. Human chains around a facility. Yes. These are very, very great examples. Die-ins, yeah. Musical peace concert. That's amazing. Great. Yeah, so these are examples. Thank you so much. So after hearing and reading all arts actions, yes, great. Musical peace, yeah, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, candidate discussions, educational pamphlets. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your great example. So while we are hearing all these things, and I'm gonna ask Herb to put a link of 350 tactics from the Nonviolent International, that's very, very helpful. And hopefully it will help you all also to find out more. Julie, I'm gonna pass to you.
All right. Thanks, Mohammed. Sorry about the slide sharing thing. I guess it's a little bit different than on Zoom, and I only practiced it once, but I think we've got the slides on. So, you know, I can stop. No, I'm not going to stop sharing. I don't want to mess it up. We're going to go right back to them in a second. So basically now we have our action idea, and we've kind of figured out what our goal and who our target is. So the next thing that we want to do is that we want to involve members in the community. So we want to think about like who, for example, needs to be involved in our action. And so for example, if your issue is the destruction of camps in your town, you would want to think about like who's your target. So maybe your target could be a local city council member pushing this agenda for the last couple of years. And then maybe for this specific issue, your tactic would be to, for example, hold a rally near the homeless camps to draw some media and really put pressure on this one city council member. And then your goal would be some kind of like, you know, raising attention, maybe even some public shaming. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go into of consultation. Let me see if I can. All right. And so we want to think about things like who is directly impacted by the issue that you're working on. So in the example that I gave, it might be the homeless folks who are living in your, the unhoused folks that are living in your area. Or maybe there could be lots of different people that are affected by this issue. It could be the neighbors, could be all kinds of people. So you want to kind of figure out who these folks are and also think about who you're accountable to. You want to get their feedback, see if they want to be involved. Take into account how they might be affected by unexpected consequences of the action that you're planning. And then just really listen to suggestions and tasks to these folks who may be more vulnerable than you are yourself. And then you want to, after doing that, you want to think about who are your allies and also who's already doing this work. And you can kind of sometimes make a list of these folks. They could be, in the example I gave, maybe people working in local shelters, maybe it's churches or people living close to the camps. Maybe there's somebody in the government who's already sympathetic that doesn't like this, city council member and their agenda. Possibly there's a union who's been working to help destroy the camp by using their heavy machinery, and they might be an ally because possibly they don't like doing this. And then you want to think about who can maybe members to your action. Another thing to remember is you don't really have to reinvent the wheel all the time. If there's already people doing this kind of work, you might be able to tap into that and just add to what they're doing. So through this consultation, maybe you found out there were some unexpected consequences that could happen as far as your action. In the example I gave, maybe every time the media comes down close to the camps, that the pictures of the tents end up on the television, and the city comes in and just bulldozes all the campsites down. And so it might be good to refine your action to hold your press conference in a different place, maybe even in front of the city council member's house. So that's why this process is really important, to try to get feedback from other people, because they'll be able to come up with ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about already. And then you can refine your action. All right. And then the next thing, after you have your action, you need to know, who do I have to have involved in the organizing? Who needs to be involved in the action? And also we want to talk a little bit about security. So if you're planning a march, for example, there could be hundreds or thousands of people involved, and maybe you're working in a coalition. I know I remember somebody in one of the earlier groups a few minutes ago, I think it was Mary, talking about working with other groups. And so if you're planning a big action, you might be having this, large organizing crew. But not every action is a march. For example, a banner drop, theoretically, one person could do it if they had to. They might need some backup in case they get arrested or something like that. But in theory, just one person would need to actually be on the site for smaller banners. So we always say more doesn't mean better. It can be better, but it also can make a mess if there's too many cooks in the kitchen. So you want to think about who you need to be a part of this organizing. And so in the past, when I've done actions, I always try to think of who's going to be assuming risk. And those people need to be part of your decision-making for sure. And a lot of times your support people also need to be a part of the decision-making. So one thing to do is to consider using affinity groups. So in this picture here, this is actually an affinity group action that took place in Des Moines, and there was a new built. And so there was another rally happening just off onto the grass. And about 30 minutes into the rally, a whole van pulled up, and out jumped these folks with these barrels down into these cement barrels. This was a group of folks who'd worked together for a long time. They'd organized this as part of the bigger demonstration, but not everybody knew that it was going to happen. The folks who were assuming the risk in this were all part of the decision making. And so the other thing that you want to think about is developing a culture of security. So I know that's kind of a new buzzword, the security culture, but there's actually something to it. You want to think about not sharing sensitive information that doesn't need to be shared with everybody. Kind of keeping your details on a need-to-know basis. And the reason for this is it keeps yourself and all of your comrades safe. It keeps everybody organizing together safe. So once you figure out what's the information that needs to be shared and who does it need to be shared with, you want to develop a whole culture of that security with everybody who's taking part in the action. And so what that means, sharing information that doesn't need to be shared, but people shouldn't be asking to get those sensitive details, because that puts everybody kind of in an awkward position when you have to say, I can't really tell you that. So that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing is that folks turning out numbers in general, if you're doing this big coalition work, a lot of people that are just turning out numbers don't have to have all the specifics. They just need to know some of the logistical things. So the next thing we want to look at are action and support roles. And I'm going to see if I can get my screen so I can see you guys. When I'm screen sharing, I can only see the presentation. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys in chat, what are some different support roles that you've heard of? So, for example, at a protest, everybody's probably seen somebody holding a sign. That could be a sign holder or a participant. But sometimes a lot of different people make different actions happen. So if you could think about maybe another action role that you've heard of, maybe a support role you've heard of, the National Lawyers Guild. Yeah, a lot of times we have legal teams that are actions. That's a good one. Are there any other support roles folks can think of? Liaison, that's right. That's the person that goes from one person or from the group to the police, and it's kind of that intermediary that has the permission of the action group to really speak on their behalf and bring that information back and forth so that they can focus on the action. The action choreographer, the person who's deciding this is going to happen then, right? Medics, extremely important. Marshals, that's right, directing people, making sure folks don't get ran over. Those are all very important roles. Okay, let me see. Sorry, I'm having problems flipping back and forth here. Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to show you a little list that we've got here. And this is only a partial list. I just put a few things down here. So we have the organizers, the logistics folks, the media spokesperson. Sometimes a group figures out their messaging and they just give that to one person and they're like, whenever the media comes, we're going to direct them to you. And so that would be your media spokesperson. People risking arrest, depending on the kind of action you've planned. We've said police liaison, the medics, the legal teams. Those are all good examples. And I'm going to ask Herb to drop a link from Uproot in the chat. And folks can go there for a much more extensive list. And even that list isn't a full list. So if you're thinking about planning an action, you can look at different roles and see what you may or may not need.
Julie, there was a question. I don't know if you have you read it or do you want to reply now?
I haven't, and I can't see the screen.
I can read it for you. Can you give us example of security information that should not be shared?
Yeah, so I can give an example of information. Hang on one second. I'm trying to get over so I can see you guys. Okay. Yeah, so sensitive information that shouldn't be shared. For example, if I were planning a direct action that had an element of something that was illegal in it, I maybe wouldn't share it with everybody because it could open things up for conspiracy charges for other people, for example. Yeah, so that would be an example. If I was planning on breaking in somewhere, I wouldn't tell everybody. I would tell them to see if they get the press release the next day. So, but that's a good question. Thanks. All right. Let me see where I was here. So I think I was going to go into talking about, if I flip this back, there we go. Okay. These two roles in particular, legal and jail support. So if you take on one of these roles as a support person, I just wanted to let folks know that these are long-term. For example, I have a very close comrade who did an action about 4 years ago, and her legal team is still working with her on that. She still hasn't been sentenced yet. I also know folks who've been arrested and they spent quite a bit of time in jail, and so their jail support is going to need to be in that role for a long time. So that's something to think about. And the other thing here says the main jail support should not be at the action. And this sounds like, but I've actually taken part in over a dozen civil disobedience actions, and that is something that I personally never thought of. I had my main jail support at most of the actions until I heard about this recently. And I was like, it was like a light bulb. I was like, oh, duh, if they get arrested, I have no jail support. So make sure that you don't have your jail support folks with you at the action. Ask them to stay at home. Miriam, we shouldn't try to do anything illegal though, correct? I don't know if that, I think maybe that was sarcastic, but that's a good comment. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here if I can do that. And I'm going to ask Herb if they can help me get another group up here, because we've talked a little bit about arrest, and I'd just like to bring some of you guys in here so that we can talk a little bit more about that. And while Herb, we're looking for maybe about 5 volunteers. So if you could just hit the blue button to volunteer, that would be great. There's not going to be any right or wrong answers. You don't have to have ever been arrested to take part in this conversation. And while we're waiting for that group, I do want to bring one comment to the forefront, and that is, in a lot of action circles, we talk about choosing to be arrestable. Are you arrestable? All these terms. And creating an action with an element of arrest, just that idea comes from a place of privilege, because we have a lot of comrades, a lot of friends, a lot of people in general who don't have the option to risk arrest. It's, you know, there's a lot of policing structures that by nature are going to arrest some folks and not others, depending on the body they inhabit, the people they love, lots of different things. So while we're getting this volunteer group, I just want to make sure when we have this conversation that we're keeping that in our minds. Can we get a couple other people that want to be part of a quick conversation about arrest? And
I can also participate if no one else.
Yes. All right, Herb. 3 will be enough. That'll be perfect. So my question is, when thinking about taking part in an action where you have the choice to possibly risk arrest, what would be some things in your own life that you would have to think about before making that choice? So if somebody said, hey, come down to such and such a place tomorrow, we're all getting busted, what's something that you have to think about before making that decision to jump on the front lines with your friends? And we don't have to go in any specific order.
I can start. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
For me, so we ask our participants if they have visas, if they're citizens, or if they're residents. That's really important in our actions because it determines what degree they can get involved, and then we have a legal briefing around that for them. And for me, because I'm Indigenous or First Nations, most of us, we ask that our group be protected and taken care of, because sometimes on actions we'll be arrested even if we're not in the action, if we're standing around because of our colour and because of the racism. So so that's another thing we look at. And for me, if I'm organising, I can't be arrestable because I have to help organise. So we step out unless we really have to move in. We prepare for a contingency plan. But if we all get arrested as organisers, like you said, we've got to make sure someone can take our place. So those are a few examples.
Right. And you named some that I would have automatically named, right? We already talked about, like, some people just by being there are already arrestable, right? The other one is documentation. What's your legal status? That's also very important to be paying attention to. Somebody else want to talk about what in your life would you have to consider before, what kind of responsibilities would you have to consider? Herb, I'm going to call on you because you're already unmuted.
Yeah, just simple things like, am I expected at work the next day? A lot of times you expect it to be catch and release, and you won't be overnight, but you can't anticipate if they're going to charge you or what they're going to charge you with and how long that's going to take. So who's going to feed my cat if I have a cat? Things like that are all things that I would consider.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Miriam. No,
I would have my legal team ready to state that a protest is a part of free speech and it's not illegal and not arrestable. And if a lot of citizens of your country want it, then their voices should be heard. So I'd have a lot of lawyers that would say that.
That's great. Yeah, having your legal team ready to go. That's extremely important. Bob, good to see you. What about you?
Well, you certainly have to be able to be in terms of your life, but the main thing is, by being arrested, your voice gets a lot louder, and you got to really make sure that that's going to happen. And whether that's the handouts or whatever, or as you're being arrested, speaking right into the microphones or the cameras, and then when you get to court, your voice gets even louder. So, but again, you have to do the PR work. You have to make sure it's covered by the media. And so there's a lot of media work done. And you need the rest of your team to do that media work.
Right. Having folks that can write those press releases, who can speak on your behalf if you can't speak for yourself, or if you prepare that beforehand. That's a great thing. I see in the chat, Esther brought up something extremely important. Are you on meds? Times if you get booked in, you're not going to have your meds in the first 24 hours at least, depending on where you're at. That's in Iowa where I've been arrested before, but other places it could be much longer. Something that people don't usually think about is addictions. Are you going to possibly be in jail going through some sort of withdrawals? Others are you more vulnerable? There's some folks that are just by nature more vulnerable within our jail systems, and that's always something to keep in mind, as well as the job and our family and our other kinds of responsibilities. What's our residency status? You know,
I want to add that in New Zealand, we talk to our participants around duration. So there's an arrest, and then there's court. You have to turn up to court, and it might be, the duration might be longer than a week or months. And so those are considerations where we have experienced that some courts get delayed, depending on which town and which is more racist and which town doesn't like it. They will book court hearings later. So if you can do the travel, because you usually, if you come from out of town, you'll get caught in that town maybe, and so you have to travel back into that town. So just those practical things, it's really about planning your arrest and being ready to do the duration if need be.
Absolutely. We have Mohammed here. I'm actually going to turn it over to Mohammed and ask him to give us a minute or two. So we've talked a little bit about arrests, and I know you're living in Iraqi Kurdistan. So what's similar or different in Iraqi Kurdistan to this conversation around arrest?
Well, the similar, like, it's very possible we all, as activists or even independent journalists, sometimes we all get arrested, but the way of treatment is completely different. Like, for example, here very easily the security police or very easily randomly they will arrest. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, because I think my the video anyway. So yeah, like one of the or several are, as I said, like security forces here are very, very randomly they are arresting people, even without having like order from the judge. Like even some partners at CPT are well known as Badinan prisoners because they were speaking out against and opposing the corruptions.
Yep.
Oh, okay. We lost Mohammed, but I think he was going to talk about the Badinan prisoners. And there's actually a big campaign happening in Iraqi Kurdistan to free some journalists and human rights defenders that were recently arrested. And one of the close partners of the team was in court talking about how he was tortured in jail. So that's something that happens here that Mohammed wanted to raise the voices about. And you can find out more about that on the CPT Iraqi Kurdistan Facebook page. So actually, I'm looking at the have a volunteer for group lead, and I'm going to share my screen and we'll do the last couple of slides. And then if people want to continue the conversation, we can go into the expo booth. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out how to, I did such a good job of figuring out how to share my slides earlier. And now
You can also
Now
pull
I
them
don't.
up if you need me to.
Oh, I've got them. I just don't know why it won't. When I hit share, the window, oh, there we go. It's like the window I wanted wasn't coming up. Okay. Let's see. All righty. My word. For some reason, okay. It's not letting me do what I want to do here. Okay, here we go. We'll just continue on. And I can't see you guys, so if there's a problem, you have to let me know. But so we talked a little bit about arrest. And so there's a couple things to think about if you're going to plan a direct action with a component involving arrest, other than the things that we just talked about. We did talk about people might get arrested even when it's not planned. And again, it's just by nature of where you live or the body you inhabit or what your police forces are like, but that's always something to look out for. It's also good to think about who's vulnerable in the group. You got to look out for these folks a little bit more, watch their back, and also think about your own actions and how that can put other people at greater risk. We talked about our personal consideration. In this photo, folks have their jail support numbers on their arms. That's something that I always do. Now, I have my jail support number memorized by heart, but I go ahead and write it on my arm because a lot of times if you get arrested, all that adrenaline's going to be running and you're not going to be able to easily remember the number. So it's best just to go ahead and put it on your arm. So also dress accordingly. When I say that, for me, that means to wear closed-toed shoes. If you do get arrested, sometimes the police can be rough. They might drag you across the pavement. You want to wear something that's long pants. And also, I choose to wear a long-sleeved underlayer. Like whatever my base layer of clothes is, I try to make sure that it's long-sleeved. Because in a lot of the holding cells I've been in, they will have you take off your jacket or your sweatshirt or your, if you have a long-sleeved outer shirt and a short sleeve t-shirt on, they'll make you take off your long sleeves, and the holding cells are generally very cold, so you want to think about that you want to be warm, or as warm as possible, I guess. And the last thing is to know your laws and know your rights. So earlier when I showed that affinity group action where people were locked into barrels, that happened in Des Moines, Iowa. And the folks that took part in that action, we knew what was going to happen. The police, unlocked them from the barrels. They put them in their police car. They drove them around the block and cited them with a ticket and released them. So these folks didn't even make it into the jail, and they just got misdemeanors. The same action happened at another protest camp in the exact same year, called Mississippi Stand. And the folks there that did, and this was also in Iowa, the folks there that did it got misdemeanor charges, and then they got civil charges from the Dakota Access Pipeline company that they were trying to stop. And then again, this same action where people were locking down into stuff in the same year happened at Standing Rock, and those folks got felonies. So just because you see an action happen somewhere, make sure that you know what the laws are in your area and be prepared for what those penalties might be. All right. So now I'm going to pass it over to Mohammed. Let's see if he's back here.
I think he was, and then we lost him.
All right. Well, here he is.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening here.
I think it's your internet.
And also we have only 3 minutes left, and I'm not sure.
All right. Well, this is going to be our last one. Do you want me to do this one and the next one really quickly, Mohammed?
That would be perfect. Thank you so much.
So I've got the slides on, so we'll do this one. The next one is develop your messaging. Just make sure it's clear, it's concise. Everybody's speaking with one voice. It's really important. If you're going to make signs, make them good signs so people can see what you're there for. Don't spend all day making a bunch of little tiny things that nobody can see. If you want to think about something the press can see from a block away, if you're going to spend time making signs, make them good ones. Think about press kits. If the media is going to show up, give them what you want to say on a paper. You can still say it in front of the camera, but go ahead and hand it to them in case you forget something. They're going to fill in the gaps with with the words you gave them instead of their own words. So show up with messaging flyers, give it to other protesters so that they know the key points to talk about. Those are all really important things. And then I'm going to stop screen sharing here. The last point, and we'll give this to you guys, it'll be in the slides, but it's about scouting. Just make sure when you have a direct action plan that that the first time that you see this spot that you're going to isn't the day of your action. If at all possible, go ahead of time, see what's in the area, see where the entrances, the exits are, if there's other people in the area that time of day. So there's all kinds of things that you want to pay attention to accessibility. Who are you inviting to your action? Are different people that are different able-bodied? I don't really know the appropriate term for that. I'm sorry. People with different bodies than you have. Are they going to be able to show up? Are they going to be able to take part in this demonstration? So you want to make sure that your spots are accessible, that you know where the security's at, you know how to get in, and you know how to get out. So that's kind of what we had. I'm going to let Mohammed wrap it up here because we've got 1 minute. Oh, you're muted, Mohammed. You're just muted as well. There you go.
Yeah. So it's online tools, like due to the pandemic. So, we as activists, we were struggling how to go on the street and protest and do activism work. But now we have these tools online, so we can use, such as like Twitter storms, when people are tweeting at the same time about for the same person, for the same topic, and Facebook actions, and like to take a photo, with yourself and publish it. And there are several different types of action that you can do on Facebook, or you can call a leader to make their phone busy, like, I don't know, for hours or for days. These can be pressured on them. So, and of course, like, we are all different and have different ideas, different tactics, how to do our actions, our activism work. But it would be very great, like, to really your action, your tactics meet with your action. And also, we should not really to kind of like to not tell others about their movement for struggles, for justice, like what to do or what to not do. So we have to really be mindful and also understand their struggle and their context of their struggle. So it's not to not put us in a position to tell people how to fight for their rights. Thank you so much. And yeah, so we will see you in a short few seconds in another room, for another 15 minutes. We can have more questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry we had some technical difficulties there. And thank you, Herb, who was technically flawless. So
thank you.
Thank you. So we'll see you guys in the expo booth if you want to join us, and you guys all have a good evening.